do. How does presence support coaching outcomes, and can you give us an example about that?
Sure, Alain, that's a great question. And I think that presence is actually fundamental to achieving the coaching outcomes that our clients come to us for. Presence shows up in a couple of ways in the coaching process, both in terms of how we as coaches stay resourceful and creative and available to support our clients. So the International Coaching Federation cites coaching presence as one of the core competencies. So we practice ourselves access to presence so that we are neutral, available, compassionate, and support our clients. And I also suggest that presence is crucial as a coaching outcome for our clients, that our leader clients also need access to presence. So an example of this was a client I worked with several years ago who had a strong habit of taking over meetings. His people said that he sucked all the oxygen out of the room because he felt so responsible for everything that happened in that meeting that he would interrupt. Somebody would make a suggestion of an idea, but he would take it over, and you could see his team members disappearing, checking out, withdrawing their energy and attention from the process. So what became crucial for him to reach his coaching outcomes was for him to be present enough to settle himself, to begin to ask questions instead of interrupting, to allow space for the wisdom of the group to emerge. So my presence as a coach was important in that, but also his presence as a client.
The first thing I learned about this present-based coaching is the very important fact of centering, and it's not something I'm very good at, and it's something that as a coach I want to improve. And through the activities that we did, the centering exercises made me realize that this would bring a lot to my clients, because the relationship field that we build and the contact that we have is really, really strong, and it's something that I'm going to take away with. So that was one of my main takeaways, and it was great to be able to practice it. As I leave this evening, I'm going to be practicing myself to do the centering activity at least twice a day if I can, just to make sure that it becomes part of my daily routine. That's my key takeaway.
What simple practices can build presence for both coaches and leaders?
There are countless practices that are available to us in these times. The simplest one is some kind of an attention training practice, a sitting practice, a mindfulness practice. There's a tremendous body of scientific knowledge about the impact of this, both in terms of health benefit, physical health, but also in terms of being able to focus and sustain our attention. So for example, a simple practice of sitting in a chair for 10 minutes a day and simply following with our attention, our inhaling and our exhaling, begins to train the nervous system to focus, to settle, to not be so reactive to events around us. It's a very simple practice that any coach, any leader can do.
If I take just the last exercise, where we had to experience on the somatic level the different posture of the coach, from the expert, the carer, the pusher, and the real coach, I found fascinating to experience it from the side of the coachee, having in front of me a pusher, an expert, a carer, or a real coach, and how I was reacting as a coachee. So I think this is going to really help me in my future work with my coachee to keep and maintain as much as I can my presence as a coach. So that's definitely one thing that I find important. Then it also helps me to talk about presence and about the importance of the somatic much better. I was already using it a little bit, but I think I'm much clearer on how I can express it with my client, and also help them understand the importance of the somatic and how working on that can help them. So it's both for me, also as a coach, but also for them. I really like what Doug is saying around presence is competency for the coach, but is also the outcome or one outcome for the coachee.
Could you give us an example about what would be a very effective somatic practice which would help coaches and leaders?
So a somatic practice is a practice that engages the whole nervous system, the entire body in learning. And in our experience, the more we can engage all of us in a learning process, the more sustainable the behavioral outcomes. So a leader that I worked with moved from being a professor to a dean at a prominent university. So instead of simply being a researcher, he was now responsible for an organizational change effort at a level of complexity he'd never had to engage with before. So he took on a simple martial arts practice that involved movement, but also a dropping of his attention downward so that he, again, could settle his nervous system. There was a lot of pushback from the faculty about these organizational changes, and with this somatic practice, he could stay much more calm, less reactive, take patience and compassion into his meetings with the faculty, listen to their concerns, but also establish really clearly the direction things were going to go in. So this simple somatic practice that he did really supported his leadership presence in a very challenging change process. For leaders, we can think of presence as having two components. One is mastery over our internal state, and secondly, the extension of that internal state into our environment such that it has a positive, trust-building, authenticity effect on the people around us. Here's again where presence shows up as a coaching outcome.
What is very important, in what I learn is really the different models that they provide to us. The model with the consciousness map, with the different aspects, emotions, the perceptions. All of this is something I didn't know before, and that I can really use in the coaching session.
You know, as people who have been working in IDC for a long time, Philippe as a supervisor, and I've been a trainer, this kind of advanced coaching course is very, very useful. And what I really liked about Doug's training on somatic coaching and being present and bringing a certain sense of mindfulness in the way we practice coaching, I think he transmits that message very well. I really enjoyed the exercises we did yesterday on creating a posture that represents a desired state that you want to achieve. And what I found very interesting was that throughout the day, this posture that I had chosen for myself, which represented the ideal state, created a new narrative in the way I was describing my project and the things that I aspire to. And through the somatic exercises, the project evolved, the desired state evolved, but also the metaphorical representation in my body of what I want to achieve changed. So by the end of the day, after all these exercises, I found that you can very quickly change and clarify what it is that you want to achieve in a very short and simple and almost playful manner through these somatic and mindful practices. So I thought it was great, and I think I can use it in my work, in my teaching, but also in my coaching practice. Yeah.